I can't imagine that this is going to be a particularly long review because, in my opinion, this movie is utterly ridiculous. I'm not going to just shit on it because it's popular or whatever. I'm not going to be a dick about it. But, it's the acting is really over the top. It's like one of those it's like I think the 80s, what makes it really iconic but also really... Some movies it really works with, and others it just doesn't work with at all. This is one of those where it just feels like it's almost like play. It's almost like you're watching maybe like something from the 70s, where like it's almost like watching one of those like adaptations of like some old, British literature, English literature. It's like kind of like it's I don't know. Or American, whatever. It's kind of like watching a 70s, like, made-for-TV adaptation of, like, Little House on the Prairie in terms of, like, the quality of the acting, I guess. It's, like, really, it's not even meant to be literal. It's, it's supposed to be kind of over the top and ridiculous. But it doesn't work for me. And I don't think it works for the scenario that the movie is trying to establish either. Every character is an archetype. I get it. That's the point. But it really comes across to me like less of a relatable, real, like, oh, this guy knows what he's talking about. He gets it. He gets what it's like to be a teenager, man. It comes across a lot less like that and more like John Hughes, like sitting in a dark like room writing the screenplay for it, like having a little creepy like self-therapy session with all the little voices in his head, all the little disparate aspects of his subconscious, duking it out at his in the memory of his upper middle class like Chicago public high school. The library that they're stuck in for most of the movie is enormous. I mean, I would have been really happy to go to a school with that looks as nice as theirs, even with the psycho principal and all. It's like that guy's not even as bad as the fucking the staff at my school shit that I had to go to. But yeah, I would class this film as one of those that are in the genre of like filmed plays, such as Glengarry Glen Ross, and I think Ordinary People, which I haven't seen but I've seen clips of, where in those movies there's at least I think for Ordinary People there's a minimal number of sets and a minimal number of characters, and most of the narrative is driven through dialogue and interactions and lots of interplay and good stuff like that. I think the only way to really go about this this review is to just editorialize, I think, about each character one at a time, one by one. Andrew Clark, the jock, is played by Emilio Estevez. Let me pull up. I got to pull up the Wikipedia article because I forgot that I was gonna put the actors for everybody. So I hope I remember to do that now as I'm recording. But he's played by Emilio Estevez, who's Charlie Sheen's brother. Charlie Sheen, the guy who had the mental breakdown and tried to be like really cool after he got kicked off the show 2.5 Men, which I've actually I picked up the box set of the complete series. I found a used copy of the complete box set of every season, including the 4 with Ashton Kutcher after he got fired for, I guess, getting into fights with the creator. Yeah, I have every single episode, and I've been making my way through the first season, and I like it. It's basically the Sigma male sitcom in a lot of ways. It's pretty funny, but yeah, Charlie Sheen's. I was gonna do an impression to try to be funny because that's what I do when I'm bored. I just sit in my room by myself and I do impressions of random celebrities because I'm weird, but I don't know if I can even do one on the spot, but no, it's too stupid. I don't think I can do it. But yeah, Emilio Estevez, the jock, is actually the nicest out of all of them, which I was surprised by because I always assumed that John Hughes, the director, was one of those nerdy types who like grow up and then write movies where he's the good, basically he in high school is like the good guy and everybody else is the asshole, especially like the popular, like sporty people. That's what he did in Weird Science, so I figured it might be similar, but he's actually, the jock character is actually the most likable one out of all of them until they basically ruin it at the end by by kind of doing this weird, like, to me it just came across as like this half-assed attempt to like pass off all of the responsibility that he had for being an asshole to some random kid, just tormenting some random kid in the locker rooms. They tried to make it like this, I guess, toxic masculinity before it was a buzzword or a term, type thing, where it's like, oh, his coach and his dad, they all, they pressured him into being this like manly man, so he had to do weird shit like that to to fill that role. And it's like, I don't know, the pressures of being a football player. It's like, yeah, if there is a protagonist in this, it's definitely his character. But I still thought that his arc was a little weak. I thought it kind of ruined it in the end, even if, and here's the thing, even if that happens in real life, because it does, I get that that's a thing, but in the movie it just doesn't. I don't know. They didn't do it well. They didn't execute it well enough for me, at least. I think that's just me. Who the fuck am I? But I just didn't like the way they like shoehorned that in at the end to try to make him more likable and or whatever. I thought he was fine. I think if anything, if he just took like full accountability for it, it would have made him pretty like the hero. But maybe that's the point. Maybe they're not supposed to be heroes. Maybe they're just people. Like I'm sure that's the thing. I know that that's what they're going for. None of them are perfect. That's the whole idea. No one clique, no one role in high school is like perfect. They all kind of have their different coping mechanisms. They all have their strengths and weaknesses, and they all kind of help each other out and collaborate. And they're greater than the sum of their parts. I get that that's the point, but yeah, I just didn't like what they did with his character at the end. I feel like it was kind of a cop out or something. Brian Johnson, played by Anthony Michael Hall, is the nerd. It's funny because he's pretty much the least important of the main cast and practically mute for most of the runtime, which is funny because in other John Hughes movies, he's usually like the comedic relief that never like shuts the fuck up, so it's interesting to see him like this. As far as his character goes, I mean, he's literally the most stereotypical depiction of a high school nerd you're ever going to see. And the only thing that surprised me was that the movie actually had him admit to contemplating hurting himself over a subpar grade, which I didn't think that the movie would be willing to deal with. Like, I didn't think it was going to get that dark, but it did. I did, and it was just in passing. But I still thought that was a nice touch. That was actually something I was like, oh, okay, they did kind of the right thing. They did something effective with that. Anyway, John Bender, played by Judd Nelson, is the delinquent, and out of all of them, I mean, he's the cartoon character. He's the peak caricature. I can't take him seriously. I can't even like talk about him like he's an actual person, because he isn't. He is neither intimidating nor sympathetic, and it really is just like watching someone chew up scenery with every scene that he's in. He is basically just an out of touch rich guy's idea of what a poor person is, and what like a tough guy from the streets would be like. I don't know. It just doesn't work. It's just like any scene he's in, it's like everybody else is kind of normal. They're all still kind of over the top, but he's like, it's like, okay, they got Tarzan. Tarzan walked into the wrong set, and now we just got to deal with this guy. It's baffling. Yeah, he's baffling. Claire Standish, played by Molly Ringwald, is the spoiled rich girl, but the movie doesn't really go out of its way to do anything with her, really, to make her likable or unlikable. She's basically just a quieter, more boring version of the character that Molly Ringwald played in 16 Candles, although not really, but basically. The actress, I guess she was a sweetheart of the 80s, but I do not find her attractive. I like Phoebe Cates a lot more. Phoebe Cates is actually like super hot. She's still really hot. Demi Moore. That's nice stuff. That's good shit. Molly Ringwald kind of looks like a fish to me. Allison Reynolds is played by Ali Sheedy. She's the crazy one. She's like the closest thing to like a goth girl in the entire movie, so maybe I like her the most. If I had to pick one, I'd probably, she's like my favorite character, I guess. Why not? She was so much better looking though before they dressed her up like a creepy like a Barbie doll, like a live. It was just like creepy. Like she looks weird when they give her the quote unquote makeover. She was pretty over the top though. I mean, she was like even less of a character than Bender before like the third, I guess, like the final third of the film's runtime, or however you want to call it, third act. but she's still probably my favorite. Just because she makes up weird shit about sleeping with her therapist and like only going detention just going to detention because she's bored, not even having to be there. I like random shit like that. It's funny. I do also feel the most sympathetic towards her in that her whole trauma, her damage, her character's baggage, is that her parents neglect her, and when she talks about that, I actually thought that was a very clever writing choice on Hughes or whoever else wrote it. Let me just make sure I'm giving the right. Yeah, written and directed by John Hughes. That was a nice touch though, because that's something subtle that you don't even need to. You can. Well, I guess it was the opposite of showing. Instead of show not tell, it was tell not show, but it worked because she just talks about it, and I feel bad for her. As opposed to, I guess it just where they kind of went wrong with Estevez, they kind of went right with Sheedy somehow. I don't know. Her character, I felt bad for when she's talking about that. It worked. It was just it worked, and the other one didn't. I don't know. Other than that, though, the janitor is like the only normal person in the entire movie, and then the principal is confusing because they kind of wrote him in to be likable in some parts, and then in other parts he's just like a straight up villain. You know, he's threatening to stalk a student after he graduates and like physically assault him just because he annoyed him, basically. He turns into a complete psycho, and then they just forget about him. And I feel like there was more to his arc. I feel like they probably cut that out of the script. They could have tied up the whole thing of him, being jaded with education and being actually self-conscious about what his students think of him. The idea of him actually caring about them deep down to an extent, and maybe redeeming himself a little towards the end by like maybe, I don't know, even something like just like giving them like, I don't know, maybe he gets like a pizza or something. He's just like, screw it, or whatever. I'm done. I'm done with it all, and just like tosses them a pizza or something. I feel like that would have been a little touch that, would have just made the movie just a little bit better. But they didn't do it, so, whatever. Fuck it, I guess, right? But yeah, all in all, you know what, this movie's, I hate to be an asshole about it, I don't want to just sound like some kid who just shits on like old movies or something, but it's like this movie is just, it's corny and it's not even like funny. It's like just kind of depressing, but it doesn't make me feel bad for any of them. Not really, not enough. It's like the only thing that's memorable about it, the only thing that really stands out about it, besides like just the fact that it's the movie that it is or whatever, people just talk about it a lot, is the stupid the ending scene with the Simple Minds song, like the famous scene that is in a bunch of other movies, and everyone it's like that's basically the whole movie. You could just watch that and like imagine what the movie around it is, and you'd probably come up with like a better movie than what the actual movie is, at least in my opinion. The way I see it, it's like what I will say is that the movie is probably the best in the subgenre of co-ed movies where it's all about those types of people, where it's all about like a clique, and they complain about not being able to move out to like the woods of Vermont or whatever, or like go live on like the banks of the river Ganges or something, and like do experimental watercolor painting, like they really want to, like that's their actual ambition in life, and but they're being forced, that's what they want to do, but then they're forced to work at like their father's company and like inherit a bunch of property and shit, like that type of, like first world problems, first world of the first world problems, But it's like the least obnoxious version of a movie like I would like Metropolitan or St. Elmo's Fire or The Big Chill. It's not as annoying as those. It's but it's like the most palatable version of a movie like that, where it's a bunch of self-important rich kids basically, crybaby bullshit. From the director John Hughes, who I actually like a lot. Ferris Bueller's got to be my favorite of his. And that, I treat that like an actual movie. Like, that's a movie. That goes beyond, like, this is supposed to be iconic. It's like Ferris Bueller's iconic. That's an actual movie. Because it's self-aware. I don't think this one's self-aware as much. And then Weird Science was pretty funny. I mean, it was just kind of supposed to be a dumb movie, but it's funny. And 16 Candles is better at doing what this movie tries to do with the whole teen angst thing, All three of those movies, to me, they all have more personality and heart than this one. And literally, like Weird Science, that that elicited more emotion from me when Lisa, the fake girl that they made with a computer, basically died, and then she came back at the very end still. But when you think that she dies, it's like, oh shit, you feel. I felt worse for her than any of these like stock characters that they threw in this one. 6 out of 10. Yeah, I mean, I get it. Every generation should have a movie. I'm sure people who grew up watching this, I'm sure a lot of them got something out of it. I'm sure it probably, brought them comfort and, made them feel seen, yada, yada, yada. But to me, it's like, I hate it because people are annoying when they do this, but I swear to God, it's overrated. If there is an overrated movie, this is an overrated movie to me. I don't know. I might be off, but I swear to God, it's like, yeah. I'm just going to keep repeating myself, but it's like, if you asked me what an overrated movie is, I would say, like, no, Godfather 1 is not overrated. It works as a movie, and it's still, it may not be the most interesting thing to every single person to watch, but I watched it and I was like, oh, this is a movie. This is a great movie, and it deserves to be, thought of as a great movie. It definitely lives up to its reputation. Same thing with like I'm just going to list mob movies now. I don't even know, I can't like think fast enough to, I can't think quickly enough to come up with something that may be more similar to this, but, well, again, like, let's just say Ferris Bueller, screw it. Ferris Bueller, iconic movie. Breakfast Club, it's iconic, but is it good? I don't know. Is Ferris Bueller good? Maybe it's not the best thing in the world, but you could still watch it now because it's self-aware and tongue-in-cheek. This is more kind of played straight, and it doesn't really work to me. I don't know. It just doesn't work. Yeah, like I said, 6 out of 10.